Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to this afternoon's session. Just a little reminder that this session is being recorded, and we ask that for that reason you don't take any of your own screenshots or recordings as we go through the session tonight. You'll have access to the recording in a couple of days' time through the Scottish Learning Festival portal. Just a little introduction to myself. I'm Yvonne Somerville. I'm one of the Numeracy and Maths Education Officers at Education Scotland, and I support across the Tayside region. I am delighted this afternoon to be joined by Denise Doig and Lucy Pringle, who are from Perth and Kinross, and they are going to be sharing a little bit around the numeracy journey that the staff and children at Coupar Angus Primary School have been on. So I'm going to hand you over to Denise, who's going to take you through the session.
Thanks, Yvonne, and good afternoon, everyone that's joined us. It's my pleasure to thank Yvonne for her support this afternoon and with all the work that has gone on in preparation for today's session as well. Myself and Lucy Pringle will share this afternoon's presentation, and we will work around different slides, so you will hear from us both this afternoon in this session. A little bit about myself. My role in Perth and Kinross Council is an Education Support Officer, and part of my role is to support settings, schools and practitioners universally with planning for improvement in numeracy and mathematics. I also have responsibility for planning and delivering our Numeracy Leader programme, which is a 3-year programme of professional learning in numeracy and inquiry. This afternoon, we plan to outline to you how staff in Coupar Angus have worked together to participate in professional learning, which enabled them to place their learners at the centre of their plans for numeracy and maths improvement in their setting in order to make maths count. And as I said, Lucy and I will share the presentation, and if at any point you have a question or would like to raise your hand or pop anything in the chat, Yvonne will be keeping an eye on that as we go through the session this afternoon. So I'm just going to hand over to Lucy to introduce herself before we get right into our presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Denise. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lucy Pringle. I'm also an Education Support Officer with Perth and Kinross, but prior to that, my background is in primary education in senior leadership. I've been Senior Manager in Perth and Kinross for a number of years, and I was previously Acting Deputy Head Teacher at Coupar Angus Primary. I've also been part of the Numeracy Leader programme, both as a practitioner and as a senior leader, and taken that across a variety of different settings within Perth and Kinross. It's our absolute privilege and pleasure this afternoon to share with you the journey that Coupar Angus Primary has been on with numeracy. I'm really looking forward to showing you some videos of practitioners talking about their good practice and some of videos from the children as well. Thank you, Denise.
So a little outline of our session. We will share a little background to Coupar Angus so that we really set the scene for you, and it will allow us then to share with you how all the staff and learners work together throughout the last session in their journey to making maths count. As Lucy said, you will have the opportunity to watch a few videos of staff and the learners talking about their journey last year and the different roles that they have in the school. And as I said, please feel free at any point. We will have time set aside at the end for questions, but if you do have any as we are moving through the slides, please feel free to raise your hand and we can stop and answer any questions that you may have. So I will just move on and just outline a little bit more of the background to Coupar Angus's involvement in the programme last year, which led to them making maths count even more in their own school. The STEM professional learning programme that ran from September 2021 to May 2022 was funded by a grant from Education Scotland's Enhancing Professional Learning Fund. The aim of the pilot programme was to enhance staff knowledge and understanding, increase collaboration and improve outcomes for learners, with the main focus obviously in numeracy and maths. And since Coupar Angus had identified raising attainment in numeracy and maths as a priority at last session, they were invited to be part of the pilot programme, which I supported along with Yvonne, whose role across the RIC was heavily involved, obviously, in the programme last session. And as you can see on the right, there is just some further information about the finer details of the professional learning programme that the staff took part in. On this slide here, we just thought we would outline the timeline and the programme in a bit more detail that the school, Coupar Angus, took part in, along with 2 other schools from Perth and Kinross Council. The timeline, as you can see, shows that staff participated in 4 collegiates and 2 in-service sessions. And perhaps one of the highlights of the programme was our final Sharing Success session, which we had at the start of May. And that was really a great opportunity for staff across the 3 schools to share their own journeys. And here we are today sharing in a bit more detail Coupar Angus's. All of the staff from Coupar Angus were involved, including senior leaders, classroom practitioners and staff from their ISP. And this allowed all of the staff to collaborate, consider their strengths and development needs and how they could take forward their learning in their own setting. And as I said, Yvonne and I co-delivered the collegiates, and we had an external consultant provide 1 in-service session and a twilight. So I'll hand over to Lucy, who will share a little bit more about the story of Coupar Angus.
Thank you, Denise. So just a bit of background about, what is Coupar Angus? What is it like? Coupar Angus Primary in Perth and Kinross is a 7-class mainstream school, but it also has an intensive support provision, which consists of 2 classes. It has a high level of ASN, 21-22 session, 59% ASN recorded outside of the intensive support provision. And it has a variety of factors, including rural poverty, high level of child protection, readiness to learn English as an additional language, and the impact of COVID was also a factor as well. So where we started from, we knew from our ASL data, our tracking and monitoring data, and various teacher discussions that numeracy should be on our school improvement plan for the 21-22 session. And we used PEF money strategically. So we bought in GL assessments to provide a baseline from primary 4 to primary 7 to pinpoint the needs for each child. And then we redid that assessment in April to see what progress had been made. We bought in an external provider, Chris McKenna from the Count on Us board. I will share a bit more about Chris later in the presentation. And each classroom teacher used their GL assessment to drill down in their pupils to see who was off track for achievement of a level and use those gaps to inform what needed to be plugged, what needed to be practiced with the children, and did 6-week block of interventions with an additional practitioner. And once they had achieved that skill, they moved on. We also focused on teaching of strategies and skills, particularly in the P4 cohort, and used intensive teaching of process of strategies to use in calculations and to see what impact that had. So if we move on to the next slide, Denise.
Thank you. So within Coupar Angus, one of the considerations was the environment that learners were working in and using. And during the November in service, which was an in-person session with myself, the question, how visible is numeracy in the school, was asked of practitioners. And staff started to consider their own classroom environments and other areas in the school, outside areas as well, that they could perhaps change or review to make numeracy make it a much more numeracy rich environment. On the next slide, we're delighted that we have Alice, one of the teachers from P23, who will share in a little bit more detail about how she adapted her numeracy working wall with her P23 learners and the changes that she made outside her classroom and also out into the playground as well to make numeracy more visible. So when I move to the next slide, we will have the video of Alice. It may be worth if you can turn up the volume on your own device because the sound level is quite low, just so that you have every opportunity to hear what Alice has to say.
Hi folks, it's Kirsten from Speakeasy here. You've not got any sound on your video, so you might need to stop sharing and make sure you're sharing the sound from it and start sharing it again.
Okay, I'll try and do that again. Thank you for that. Okay, I'll try and share again, and if somebody can then just let me know if you can hear this time.
No, there doesn't
Nope,
seem to be
still not getting
sound.
sound.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah, so as a staff
That's it.
team, we decided that it was crucial for the development of numeracy for children to explore number everywhere they went within the environment. So that meant taking the numeracy environment out with the classroom. So for example, outside of my classroom in our cloakroom area, we numbered all the pegs, and not just with numerals, but showing that as a picture as well and as a number written as a word, so that the children were experiencing number in lots of different ways. We then had clocks put up around the school, and we had varying displays demonstrating numeracy in different ways. So in particular, I had a display where we looked at multiplication using concrete pictorial and abstract ways, and we had evidence of that, of what the children had created on the display board, using photographs, using artwork the children had created, and even little drawings that they'd done as displays for our environment. Before making changes, the first thing I thought about was where the children are in their learning and where we're going to next. So, thinking that way, I decided to make sure the environment was, first of all, at a level where the children could actively engage in their learning, which meant bringing displays and bringing working walls down. So getting on your knees and thinking, what can the children see? What does it look like from their level? And that's where the working walls sort of developed from. And I had multiple working walls that were then created. So I had a calendar where the children actively explored days of the week, months of the year, the date, through moving parts every day, and that became part of our daily routine. I then had a number wall, which was then easily adapted to meet the learning requirements that we had at that time, and to also allow children to explore and experiment and exploring their own curiosity within numeracy. So that was a wall that had numbers on it, and it had lots of Velcro strips so that the children could explore different calculations. They could explore groups of, in multiplication. So
really thinking about that CPA approach and thinking how can children demonstrate their learning in a creative way where they are leaders in their own learning.
So I'll hand over to Lucy now, and she'll just talk a little bit more about the numeracy environment.
Thank you, Denise. So we just heard from Alice about how she developed in the early years part of the school, the numeracy environment. And we worked as a whole staff collaboratively about how to create a numeracy rich environment throughout the school. One of the things we noticed from our P4 to 7 children was there was a constant round of questions for class teachers about what time was things, what time was lunch, what time was break, what time was home time. And one of the things that we did for P4 to 7 was develop a consistent approach for displaying time. So you can see some examples there on the slide of clocks demonstrating what time things are happening, what events are happening throughout the day, and just really encouraging the children to have those discussions and work out mentally for themselves or with peers when things were happening, how much time was there till lunch, till break, and things like that. That consistency of approach, but also those little things in the classroom that day by day add up to creating this really numeracy rich environment, that maths and numeracy is all around us and that it's constantly there from the minute you enter the building to the minute that you leave. If we just go on to the next slide, Denise, thank you. So one of the things we wanted to do was to look at, how is numeracy evident across the school for learners, and went on a walkthrough with some selected primary 5-6 learners and did a bit of an audit to see, was there more literacy or more numeracy? What could we see as we went through all throughout the school, from the gym hall, the dining hall, as we come into the entryway of the school. And what they consistently said was there was a lot of literacy, but there wasn't a lot of numeracy, and how could we build that up? So one of the things that we did, a high area of traffic in the school, one of the corridors, one of our practitioners created this Maths is Everywhere display. It's a very simple things that she's put in there, a digital watch, a receipt, a timetable, a weather forecast, a bit of shopping catalogue, all those things that were really relatable to the children that they use in everyday life, that they had seen and they were familiar with. But those things on a display, it was the buzz and the talk of the school. Have you seen this new display? It was the chatter all around the school talking about it, and really bringing that home to them again and again, how meaningful numeracy is in everyday life and how we use it every day. All these things that we kind of take a bit for granted, that they are really important, and that's where they were. So that was a great success, having that just one simple display really shifted the culture.
Thanks, Lucy. We will now hear from Hannah, the P4 teacher last session, and how she will outline how she used data and focused on teaching strategies to increase her learners' resilience when tackling calculations. And Hannah also outlines the impact changing her approach had on her learners. And fingers crossed this time that you can hear the video from the start and we don't have technical issues this time. If you can let me know in the chat, that would be great.
So we've focused more on maths strategies because of assessment data that we had at the start of the year, and as a school having a focus on maths and through our collegiates. In my class, I looked more closely at teaching specific strategies and giving the children time to learn strategies and practice those independently before building a bank of them, and then letting them choose what worked for them, and then discussing efficiency of strategies. To begin with, they found it difficult not to focus on the answer to a calculation, but through more practice they were more able to talk about strategies and processes that they were using. So learners became more confident in talking through their strategies and their processes and sharing those both with myself and with the class in discussions. Children were able to draw on a range of strategies that they had developed, as well as resources that were available to them and showed an increased resilience in tackling calculations.
So hopefully from Hannah you heard there how her different approach to teaching strategies and giving time over to learners to practice and to become more independent in their learning, that impact, you know, for them was that they became more confident and they obviously used different resources and supports where necessary to build their knowledge and confidence. So I'm going to hand back over to Lucy for the next slide.
Thank you. So I touched briefly at the start of the presentation on use of PEF spend at Coupar Angus, and one of the things we did was get in a third-party provider called Chris McKenna, who runs Count on Us, and one of the things that he has from Count on Us is a numeracy blueprint board, which you can see one of our learners holding up there. One of the things that Chris McKenna really does is move between the concrete and the pictorial and the abstract, and that was a really big push for us this year at Coupar Angus, for that mental agility, for building up that dexterity with working with a number. We bought in training for him to come talk to the staff, but also to do a training session with our support staff, and also come into the class and work with each of the classes and the pupils, just doing a quick run through of how to use the board, using some games with it. Everybody uses them. There's no stigma attached to them. They're not just for certain groups. Everybody has a board. They're used in a variety of different ways, but pupils feel really confident with them and have reported back they thought they were a really useful tool. It complements the teaching of numeracy within the class, and it was really this approach to the concrete pictorial abstract that we wanted to really bolster and support with the strategies of how to tackle calculations, and it was very popular with both staff and pupils. Thanks, Denise. If we go on to the next one. Another part of our numeracy journey at Coupar Angus was using the Maths Week Scotland grant. So I applied for Maths Week Scotland in order to create numeracy ambassadors within Coupar Angus. And the pitch was very simple. I wanted the money to be able to create packs, a pack for each child in the school that they'd be able to take home of dice, of dominoes, of deck of cards, so that they could learn to do games, develop games, be able to teach those games to different cohorts of children, and then teach them to parents at home. And that was the journey aim. Be able to create these numeracy ambassadors who were going to raise the profile of numeracy and really promote that within the school. So one of the reasons that we created that was just to do with attitude within the school for learners. One conversation I had overheard was a couple of primary 1 children talking about not liking maths very much, and it was very early on in term 1 when I'd overheard this, and it was clearly a conversation that they'd had at home with older siblings, because we did think, you've not been here that long, how can you not like maths so far? And we really wanted to change that cultural shift, that perception of that maths isn't cool, or maths isn't fun, or I don't like maths, I'm not good at maths. And that was wanting to get the maths ambassadors involved in that. So here are some photos of our maths ambassadors. First thing I did was pick a group of children, not based on attainment or based on need for numeracy, but based on love for learning. So I knew that this bunch of children were very enthusiastic about school and would be really good ambassadors for the rest of the school on being a maths ambassador and promoting numeracy. So we did a survey of attitude to them. You know, what did they feel about maths? Took a baseline of that. We created lanyards, so they were proper ambassadors, wore the lanyards every time we met and went through our program with them, and we created games. So they worked on games that their class teacher and I provided for them. They reviewed them and they adapted them and tweaked them, and then they created their own games, a game that they would teach to a younger child, which they made up their own rules, their own scoreboards, their own playboards for them, and then they went and taught them to a younger P2-3 class. And then we adapted that even further by taking that to going outdoors? How would we use outdoor natural resources to create games? That was the general purpose of doing it, and it was a great success. They were very excited about it. They were very proud to be maths ambassadors, very proud to wear their lanyards, and very proud to be teaching that in a role of responsibility to younger children. And it's definitely something that other children looking up to them to be doing that, and a great opportunity for leadership for that primary 5, primary 6, middle of the school role. So just before we hear from the maths ambassadors, we just want to sort of recap what is the outcome of this journey. Putting in our STEM grant, doing our collegiates, raising the numeracy rich environment profile, having our maths ambassadors flying the flag for promoting numeracy. What we found when it came to the end of the session last year, that we had raised attainment by 10% across the board for Coupar Angus, which was a very big deal for us. We were very proud of all the hard work that the staff and the children had put into that, and also Yvonne and Denise's participation as well. But a 10% increase in attainment for us for numeracy was a big win for us last year.
Thank you, Lucy. And I'll move to our last video, and we'll share with you some of the maths ambassadors' thoughts about their role and the training that they took part in, and then the creation of some of the tools and games that they created. So we'll hear from the P5 and 6 pupils now.
Because we were really enthusiastic, and we were thought to, if we done it, then people would think that was cool and they would start doing math.
I enjoyed designing the games. I also enjoyed playing and practicing the games. We would have to brainstorm the game that we're making. We used dice, sticks, stones, boards, and pens. We'd have to write our ideas down. We'd choose which one. I'd write it down on a sheet of paper, and when that's all done, when I'm all done writing the instructions, I'd do the back of the sheet, decorate the back. We played the games with each other, and then we also went to the P2-3 class and played with them, and P4 class.
So very good about maths. Like, it's kind of like the learning that sometimes I start at the top, and then sometimes I feel like I can't do it, and that's usually when I do the math assessments. But then I always manage to do it, and I won the improvements in math award.
So that was our P5, 6 learners just sharing a little bit about what their role was. And as you can see, they're still proudly wearing their lanyards in the videos. That takes us to an opportunity for yourselves in the audience. If anybody has any questions around what we've shared this afternoon, we'd be more than delighted to answer any questions. Or it would also be good to hear from anyone that has joined us if your school or setting has similar roles for pupils in your setting, or plans to involve learners in an ambassador role for numeracy and maths. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop your hand up, or you can use the chat function as well.
So there's a question that's come in there asking, like the idea for developing working walls, how often would you recommend adapting and changing the displays?
Thanks, Neil, for that. I know we heard from Alice, and in her little input, and she described, how she adapted the walls to meet the learners' needs, and obviously it would have changed as frequently as they were changing their kind of focus within what was planned for the learners. But perhaps, Lucy, you would like to add a little bit more since you were actually in the school at that point.
Thanks, Denise. Yeah, thanks, Neil, for your question. Like Denise said, as frequently as they were changing numeracy topic, it wouldn't be on a daily basis or anything like that. It would be every couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, I would say. And it was just kind of keeping that fresh, but also manageable as well for the class teacher who has 1,000 other things going on. It was just those little things. So maybe 1 or 2 things would change on the wall, and they would notice that and discuss that. And then it would refresh completely incrementally after that. But yes, it was in a manageable way. It wasn't, redoing your maths wall every Monday morning or anything like that.
Can I just come in there as well? And one of the things that Alice did talk about was the fact that she had a calendar, so that stayed there all the time, and that was part of their daily routines. And obviously a great way to, have learners thinking and using numeracy and maths in a really practical way on a daily basis. And you can imagine at any age or stage, people are always delighted to be able to share, dates and birthdays and that sort of thing, but all the learning that goes around that as well. And Alice, when we were, out creating the videos, talked about how she adapted the wall, when it was addition, and then the repeated addition became multiplication, and she changed from using perhaps numicon shapes to counters to create arrays, and that how then it evolved into a new operation for the learners. So thanks for your question, Neil. Great. It would. What authority or area are you from, Neil? It's always good to hear from people in other areas, not just in our regional collaborative. I'm sure there's more than Neil out there. You've been brave enough to ask a question.
Hi, sorry, I thought I would just speak rather than typing in. I'm doing supply just now, so I'm on the list for East and West and Bartonshire and Glasgow after finishing my probation day here last year.
Great, thanks, Neil. That was nice to have an early career teacher with us, so thanks for joining. Does anybody else have any other questions?
As well, people are maybe typing in there. One of the things that when I was listening there, Lucy, I thought it was interesting, the kind of how you came about choosing the numeracy ambassadors, and as you said, it wasn't necessarily, the ones that were maybe that kind of over enthusiastic mathematician or super confident, that it was that kind of range of learners that you chose it. I thought that was really interesting, and actually it's the kind of thing, sometimes we ask children to volunteer for the eco monitor or the junior road safety officers, but actually sometimes with the likes of these roles related to maths, asking the children to volunteer, they might kind of have that fear of not putting themselves forward. So do you think the kind of way that you chose them, did that encourage some people to kind of take part in the role who you don't think would have necessarily volunteered to take part?
Yes, 100%, definitely. I think they were chosen carefully within the mainstream cohort or the entire school cohort because they were very enthusiastic children about different things, not necessarily academic learning. But there was a widespread range of need within that class and a widespread range of love of maths, that's for sure. So doing the baseline kind of survey with them to say what did they think about maths, and the majority of them thought that they were okay at maths, but quite a few of them thought that they were terrible at maths. They didn't enjoy it, they were nervous about it. And it was taking that way of introducing it with games, of being the maths ambassador, you know, as a kind of a non-threatening kind of start with them. Everybody loves a game, children love games, and getting that as the kind of pitch to them, but definitely building up confidence, because some of them would never have put themselves forward in a million years to take that role, to design a game, to teach it to another child. They wouldn't have put themselves forward for that. So it was building up the whole bank of skills, as well as being a really good ambassador for numeracy within the school.
I'll also just add a little bit there. I made a visit to the school to meet the ambassadors, and they were like super keen and enthusiastic to be able to share, you know, that whole process of thinking about a game, thinking about the rules, the resources that they would need, if it was simply dice or if it was just a whiteboard and a pen. And we spent time, you know, moving around, playing each of the different games with the person that had created that game. And I can't believe, and you know, how quickly a whole hour passed. You know, I was there to see the clocks on the wall, and one of the learners in the class had said, "Oh my goodness, look at the time already. It's only 10 minutes till we finish up for the afternoon," because they had all got so involved. And, you know, that was the ambassadors themselves, you know, playing the games and practicing with each other. And I'm quite sure when they took, you know, the games to play with younger learners, they would be so good at explaining, because they were so confident themselves in playing them and using them. But it was a really great opportunity to go and visit and actually, you know, hear them explaining all their thinking behind why they'd chosen that game, and then actually playing it with them. So it was really great to go and visit them at Coupar Angus.
Comment in the chat, they are saying that they really like the idea of having the maths ambassador. And I think, again, with what you were saying at the beginning, the fact about literacy rich, you know, we often have a lot of opportunities where, you know, we do paired reading with older and younger learners, but actually your idea of the maths ambassadors is a way of kind of bringing that kind of peer learning in with older and younger learners, but with a numeracy focus on it. So quite an interesting slant that you have brought to that.
And I guess at this point, you know, perhaps a next step will be to involve parents more. Because of restrictions last year, there wasn't the opportunity to share face-to-face with parents, but going forward, I think that would be a really good next step, would be when it's a meet the teacher afternoon or something, or perhaps even during Maths Week. I'm sure these will be a great opportunity for the ambassadors to share with that wider audience, and, you know, just share with parents as well the whole process that they've gone through, not just here and come and have a look at the work I've been doing in numeracy, but this is how I've been able to use it to help other learners as well. Yep, and just as you said, Yvonne, as well, you know, there's always things like, you know, the eco committee, the road safety, we have librarians very often appointed, you know, but, you know, we are always trying, you know, numeracy seems to kind of just be in the limelight rather than front and foremost on centre stage. So it was a great opportunity to really raise the profile as well in Coupar Angus.
Definitely. It looks like somebody's typing in the chat. Joanne, feel free to unmute yourself if it's easier. Oh, just I love the idea of the maths ambassadors. Well, hopefully we'll see lots of people popping up on Twitter with some maths ambassadors from their inspiration tonight.
That's great. I'll just flick to our final slide, just with our contact details. If there is anything that we could share in more detail with you, then please feel free. And obviously, it will be great to see if other people across the country develop numeracy ambassadors or maths ambassadors in their setting. Hopefully a great way to share and see what's going on. And obviously, there's anything that we can do to help, please just get in touch with either Lucy or myself.
And thank you very much to both of you for sharing your journey with us. I hope people have found that useful. There is another wee question that's popped in there. Did you use the approach with S1 and S2 people? So have you linked in with it with your kind of cluster high school at all?
No, it was strictly for P1 to P7 for Coupar Angus Primary, but that is a very good idea to do that as perhaps a transition event or a cluster cohort. That is a very good idea. Thank you.
And I think if we've got people on the call that are secondary based, you know, again, it's the kind of thing, could you use some of your younger learners and kind of train them up as maths ambassadors, your kind of, you know, your S1 to 3s, and then link up with your local primary settings, and so that the kind of older primary pupils are getting that experience from some of the secondary people. So again, lots of different opportunities for you to kind of think about some of the things that you've heard and how you can kind of tweak them and take them forward as part of your setting.
Great. Yep, absolutely. A great opportunity to think about links with your feeder secondary and, you know, a great transition project as well. You know, you could have kids developing games and sharing them across a whole cluster perhaps, which is a great way to involve and, you know, get people really much more interested in maths and take that fear away, especially moving up to high school. So we just have a few minutes left in tonight's session. Just before we finish, I would just really like to thank everybody that has joined us today. Obviously thank the staff and learners from Coupar Angus for their dedication and commitment to last session's work, and obviously going forward as well, that they are very much have numeracy and maths as a real priority within their school, and that they involve everyone, learners, staff, in that journey as well, which has made a real impact, as we heard tonight. Can I also thank Yvonne for her support this evening and during last year's pilot programme. And hopefully, if anybody leaves tonight's session and has a question, or if you're watching this as a recording, please feel free to contact either Lucy or myself. And I hope you all have a good evening. Thanks for joining us.